Okay, we have returned. This is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560.
The Answer.
Here with Larry Smith, Jim Leahy, and Deborah Schreiner. I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. And we didn't do the tax man thing today, did we? Because we're not going to talk taxes.
That's right. Because we have attorney Larry Smith.
Let's still do the Mr. Know-It-All segment.
And now, here's that man with a head just crammed full of knowledge, Mr. Know-It-All.
Today, Mr. Know-It-All is our special guest, Larry Smith. Isn't that right, Jim?
That's right. And Larry, I know that you've had a couple of questions. We were talking back and forth. And before the show, you mentioned statute of limitations. Mm-hmm. Now, I remember that's like one of your frequently asked questions. Am I correct?
I get a lot of so statute of limitations. People are always asking me about, hey, the statute of limitations is run on this particular debt. Yet it's still on my credit reports. In other words, they're complaining that the statute of limitations running, meaning so much time has gone on, the creditor is not even allowed to go after me in court. Mm-hmm. But this is still on my credit reports.
Yeah,
that's not legal. So it's a big confusion. So first, let's say what a statute of limitations is, because some people think they know what it is and they don't. A lot of people think that a statute of limitations is just a time that runs out on a debt. And it's not true. A statute of limitations really is, there's a statute of limitations in every aspect of law. Most. Listen, even Bill Cosby's off the hook on certain things because of the statute of limitations. So in Illinois, let's talk about a credit card. Mm-hmm. In contract law under Illinois, if there's an unwritten contract and it's breached, the person who is the victim has 5 years to sue you in court and take you to court and file a lawsuit. Just file a lawsuit, get to the clerk's office, get a stamp, done. You got 5 years to do that. If it's a written contract, you have 10. So with 5 years, with the credit cards, what I get a lot of people saying is, hey, the 5 years are up. They can't sue me, and they didn't. So, But they're still reporting the debt on my credit report. That's not right. If they can't sue me, how could they report that I owe it? The answer to that is that your credit report is not governed by a statute of limitations. Your credit report is governed solely by the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It is a preemptive statute. The states cannot create a statute that says anything more about credit reporting. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act says a credit card that's charged to profit and loss has 7 years of reporting, and that's the answer. Uh-huh. So it doesn't matter if your state that you live in, some states have a 3-year statute of limitations, some have 5, some have 10. If there's a written contract, there's a 10-year statute of limitations, and people get confused because they're like, hey, it's not been on my credit report, but somebody's still suing me. How could they do that?
This is big because credit cards used to be interpreted as a written contract, and it went to 5 years, and that's big.
Supreme Court made a big decision on that about, 7 years ago?
Was it that long ago?
Something like that.
Something like that. And then it's also like people get this with bankruptcies also. They say, well, it's going to go away. You're just not obligated to pay it. The debt's still there.
Right.
You still had this debt. It was still there. You still owed it. You still didn't pay it. Right. And that's really what they're reporting.
They still want their money. They might not be able to go after you in court, but hey, they've got 2 more years to report it and put a little pressure on you. And then when that goes away, then they've got very little weaponry to get this debt.
Sometimes you might want to clear up that debt even though they can't sue you, and the only way you're going to do that is pay them, right? Or come up with some sort of an agreement with them for them to remove it.
You know who burns people the most on that are utilities.
Oh,
utilities. So I get this call a lot. People will call me up and say, "Hey, they will not shut on my electricity because of a 15-year-old bill. They can't sue me for it. The statute of limitations is run. They can't report it on my credit, but they won't." They won't turn on my gas. They won't turn on my electricity. I'm like, well, that's what they got.
You owe money.
That's what they got. So I guess they can't sue you. They can't report you. They can't really do anything to make you pay it. But I guess they also don't have to serve you either.
That's good.
And that's something.
And one thing about computers is that now they could track this stuff. Because they used to kind of fall off in the record keeping. But now they, your name comes up. Hey, this guy still owes. It was 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. They still have it.
Yeah. Now the computers store things forever, right?
Yeah.
So if
And
you
one
incurred a
thing,
debt
almost
with-
when you pull someone's credit report, as I do when I'm doing bankruptcies, for instance, you find out almost everybody's got a utility on it. It'll come up. It'll almost always come up.
most utilities don't report to the credit. This is what I found. Most utilities won't report the debt to the credit bureau generally. Only when you're late. Only when you start going delinquent. When you start going delinquent, then they will report you as delinquent. Otherwise, they typically don't report.
I did not know that. That's valuable
Try to find a
information.
North Shore Gas or a Commonwealth Edison account on a credit report that is reported in good standing. I'd love to see it. I'd love them to do it.
And of course,
Yeah,
most of the
you
time,
would-
the
yeah.
people are in good standing, but that was reported at one time. So if you're late once, they report it, and then it's going to show up on your credit report. It's not going to show that you owe them anything, but it's going to pop up. It always pops up.
7 years. You miss one payment, that's there for 7 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I hope that answers your question out there, ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you, Mr. Know-It-All.
And that's right, Attorney Larry Smith. Thank you so much for answering
is
that
good
question.
stuff. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Of course, that makes sense. So it's like, hey, we'll only tell you when you mess up, though.
Well, it's
It's not been the 30 years you've been paying on time.
Well, man, we talk about the CSED date a lot, which is the collection statute expiration date for.
We'll talk
for
about that
IRS
the next
debts.
segment.
And same thing. They try to
Anyway,
expand it.
Open Tax Resolution is there for you, ladies and gentlemen. 312-664-6649. And visit ChicagoTaxTeam.com. It's going to be your hub to help fight the IRS. Phone number, sir?
888-822-1777. That's 888-822-1777.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because after the commercial break, more IRS Radio Hours on the way. We're going to wrap it up IRS Radio Hour style on AM 560. The Answer.